Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Will you please silence your cell phones and mobile devices and stand and join me in welcoming the Claremont McKenna College class of 2019.
Good afternoon. Let us unite our hearts in prayer. Our Father God, how wonderful the works of your hands. As we have gathered here to celebrate these graduates as they step forward to examine new places, encounter new experiences, and new learnings. Let us not forget the blessings that follow behind us. We pay homage to the school, which has given them a safe place to learn, a place where freedom of ideas flourish, and a strong foundation is laid by which our graduates are launched into the world to create a better place. We give thanks to our instructors and our administrators who have richly cared for our graduates, knowing the seeds that they have sown may fall upon fertile soil. We give thanks for the parents and the families of the graduates who have traveled with these graduates up and down the sometimes stony roads we trod. We give thanks to the friends and supporters of these graduates in this institution for the smiles and the good times, the hardships and the tears we have endured together, side by side, and all for those who could not be here with us at this time of celebration. As they finish this leg of their journey, we ask your grace and anointing. The grace and anointing of the good work that has already begun. The grace and anointing to make their choices wise and be faithful in their commitments. The grace and anointing to turn away from injustice and turn toward justice, equality, and peace. The grace and anointing to uplift those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and discord, and provide comfort so that they might be fulfilled and their pain turned to joy. The grace and anointing to avoid foolishness, the foolishness to believe that they cannot make a difference in this world and do the things that others say cannot be done. But most of all, we're thankful for the love in this space today, a love that has been made evident through the relationships, a love that these graduates will carry with them beyond the walls of this great institution. Amen. And God, since you're listening here, I want to give a shout out to Steve Bullock. God bless you, graduates. God bless you, and I pray God's peace into your lives. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please remain standing while our graduates lead you in the song that means so much to them? Doc, hit it. As a motto at Claremont McKenna, we always will be part of dear old CMC, ever loyal to Claremont McKenna. Please be seated.
Good afternoon. It is my great pleasure on this glorious day to welcome you all to the 72nd Annual Claremont McKenna College Commencement Ceremony. First, a thank you to our Registrar and Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs, Elizabeth Morgan, for leading us in song. She has been working under my voice tutelage for about 6 months now, and I deem her to be an A+ student. I don't know why everyone thinks that's funny. It's totally serious. Okay. We are honored today to have Timothy Wright III, our class of 1977, and an alumni trustee of our college here with us today, and thank him for his inspiring invocation. I would also like to let you know that I take great pleasure in recognizing that this very brilliant class of 2019 continues to distinguish itself in the fact that we have 3 valedictorians, an absolute tie for that esteemed award. Ellery Kelker-Wolf, Joseph Scheuer, and Meredith Teamy. They share that honor, and they led the procession of the class in this afternoon. Trustees, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, grandparents, siblings, extended families, friends, and guests, thank you all for finding your way here today to share in this milestone moment. And to the class of 2019, on behalf of myself, your Assistant Vice President and Dean of Students, D.T. Graves, and the entire Dean of Student staff, we extend our warmest and most heartfelt congratulations to each and every one of you. We are beaming with pride today as we see you come across the stage. Graduates, the folks in this tent are here for you. They share this achievement with you. They cheered you from the sidelines, made sacrifices without hesitation, cried, laughed, pleaded, prayed, problem solved, guided, and listened. I'd like to give you a moment to salute them. Be sure to take a moment outside of this official ceremony, in a quiet moment perhaps, to speak with them about what your CMC experience has meant to them, and thank them. That is surely all they need. Class of 2019, you are something really quite special, individually and collectively. It can be seen in your commitments to one another, your dedication to supporting your undergraduate colleagues in their respective journeys, and your love for this place, CMC. Today, we celebrate your considerable academic and developmental accomplishments. You have been active participants and learners in your experiences here, in your courses, in your research pursuits, in your athletic endeavors, in your leadership roles, in your co-curricular experiences, in your friendships and the relationships you formed across campus with your faculty, your coaches, your custodial staff, groundskeepers, dining staff, public safety, department staff, and staff across the campus. We have seen your capacities grow to engage in difficult discussions, to consider and seek multiple opinions, to listen to each other across your differences, and all of this in the pursuit seeking a deeper understanding. I know, it's been difficult. I feel you. Along the way, you've braved illnesses, challenges, losses, natural disasters, registered parties, and dozens of other trials and tribulations to get to this point. You have triumphed. As I look out at all of you, I am overcome with emotion at the individual narratives that I see in front of me. These faces, your faces will be missed here. The Dean of Student Staff carries each of you in our hearts as you walk out into the world. But we do so knowing that you have internal compasses that will always show you true north, for you have found your internal directions here. So I promised I would be brief, and hot dog, I definitely want to be invited back next year. So now I am going to move on and provide you with a roadmap of today's program. I have participated in 39 college commencement ceremonies. Now you are thinking, no way. She cannot be older than 35. But don't be distracted by doing the math right now. That 39 includes my own various exercises and those I attended as a professional. The point being that our program today is set up to be the very best of that entire lot. In just a moment, for example, I will introduce you to your class elected speaker, Mr. Bruno Youn. Right? Bruno is soon going to need his own press agent. Following Bruno's remarks, Senior Class President Edgar Warnholtz will introduce our distinguished speaker today. Today we have the very distinct honor to welcome Dr. Arthur Brooks to deliver the commencement address. I recently read a passage from Dr. Brooks's latest book, Love Your Enemies: How Decent People Can Save America from the Culture of Contempt. And I was intrigued by his framing of the core problem of contempt. He remarked, when you treat someone with contempt, your own anger and depression and isolation increase. It may give you some minor satisfaction in the moment, but then you actually become less happy than you had been, and you are now part of the problem. His writing makes me think deeply about the role contempt for others is playing on the national stage and within our daily spaces and families and communities. So I'm very much looking forward to his remarks. Following Dr. Brooks' address, Professor Heather Anticole, the Boswell Professor of Economics, and Tina Daniels, our class of 1993 and a member of the Board of Trustees, will present Dr. Brooks with an honorary degree. Laura Grisolano, from the class of 1986 and also a college trustee, will then present the Distinguished Service Award to Mr. Timothy Wright. Then we get to the small matter of conferring your degrees. Our esteemed Vice President and Dean of the Faculty, Dr. Peter Uven, will flex his considerable linguistic muscles as he announces the graduates of the class of 2019. Chair of the Board of Trustees and member of the class of 1982, David McGrublian, will be joined by Professor of Economics, Darren Filson, to present your diplomas and hoods. Coming full circle, President Hiram Chodosh will then step to the podium to deliver a very important charge to our graduates based on what we have learned from all of you. So, without further delay, it is my distinct honor to spend a moment to introduce you to your class of 2019 elected speaker, Mr. Bruno Youn. It's over here. Thank you, Bruno. I'm going to say a few words about you. Okay? Bruno is truly a CMC treasure. He hails from Seal Beach, is a PPE major affiliated with the Rose Institute, Phi Beta Kappa recipient, source consultant, and served as an Athenaeum Fellow. Bruno has also worked in the Quantitative and Computing Lab. He is wise beyond his years, challenges himself in ways few of us do, thinks hard about the world outside of himself and the impact he can have on the world, while also being astutely dialed into the impact that the world is having on him. He inspires me and all of those around him. You only need to spend 5 minutes with him to realize you are in the company of someone who is very bright, very talented, very thoughtful, very reflective, courageous, and quite lovable. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bruno Youn. Congratulations.
Thank you, Sharon, for introducing me. She read off quite a bit about me, and most of it has to do with what I did at CMC. But I want you all to visualize freshman year Bruno, freshman year me. Think of me, but shorter and with about 3,000% more acne. If it were freshman year me invited to speak up here, he would have cowered on stage and probably run off after an awkward sentence or two right about now. He wouldn't have consented to speak because he would have been afraid of humiliating himself. He wouldn't have even shown up to the ceremony. He would have stayed in his dorm in Phillips and played Fallout 4 or some other game. He knew he needed a lot of time alone because his autism made him only able to handle society in small doses. He was ashamed of his autism because his mission at CMC was to fit in at all costs. In fact, that's why he chose CMC. He thought he was broken in a way CMC could fix. CMC is an extroverted place, he thought. Maybe it would rub off on him. That mission was one of the only things that could get him out of his dorm room. If he got invited to do something, he said yes. Even if that something was taking joyrides on one of those medical scooters. You know those medical scooters? Yeah. Well, his efforts paid off, but not in the way he expected because I'm still autistic. I take things way too literally, I still talk way too loudly sometimes, and I forget names 3 minutes after being introduced to someone. Unless it's really distinctive, like maybe Zippy, just an example. Well, his efforts paid off, but he is left behind in the sense that he left behind him a trail of broken stereotypes. I found home in the liberal arts rather than the STEM majors and people of the spectrum stereotypically take in college. I've worked a job for a full year here on campus that has me in a suit and tie, eating dinner at a table with multiple kinds of forks, talking with and speaking in public about some of the world's most distinguished people. I've been in multiple positions where I managed people, even though stereotypes say I should be in a back office somewhere in my own little world managing things. So what happened to freshman year me? Did I lose something by becoming who I am today? The truth is that to get this far, I have suppressed some of my autistic traits, even though I would consider many of them a fundamental part of my personality. But changing as an individual doesn't have to mean losing your individuality. How is this possible, you asked? I negotiated with society, and I'd imagine everyone negotiates with society. And the good thing about these negotiations comes when you think you're making a concession. You think you're giving something up. A lot of times you're not, and society is none the wiser. And let me demonstrate with some real negotiations I had, which I should add a disclaimer are purely my own negotiations and representative of nobody else's. Okay, society, I've read over your demands. I will stop flapping my hands, but I still get to get up from my seat and pace around without owing anybody an explanation. But my interest in obscure, sometimes outdated internet memes that nobody gets, you can take that from my cold, dead hands. Okay, fine. I won't try to talk about them as much with people. What about obscure historical facts instead, like Weimar Germany stuff? Yes? Okay, we'll get back together tomorrow to negotiate some more. Okay, so I would actually mourn the loss of what I thought was my individuality, but later, sometimes I would be like, sucker. I didn't need to flap my hands anyway. I have other things to do that fulfill that same need. And I got friends here at CMC who are at their happiest discussing obscure historical facts. I got something for nothing. And this is how, despite my faking it, I learned how to be myself. Now, I told this whole story about autism for a reason. As we go out to change the world and all that jazz, we gotta remember that the world will change us in ways that will make us question who we really are. We're endlessly told to be ourselves, to be authentic, to be you. From all this propaganda, you'd think that being inauthentic is like one of the worst things you can do at CMC, right up there with things like no showing to the Athenaeum or taking more than 2 chocolate-covered strawberries at tea time. But only rarely are we given any guidance on how to be ourselves. I can't tell you how to be yourself, but I can tell you this from my experience. It's that your conception of who you are may be more flexible than you think. Of course, there are a lot of things you can't compromise on, especially your moral compass, and it's precisely these non-negotiables that have allowed us to change CMC. Most of us recognize this change as the most coordinated and publicly visible form through organizations and social movements, and we have one of those for every letter of the alphabet, from advocates to, what's a CMC social change that was highly coordinated and starts with a Z? The Zaire Center, the Academic Success Consultants, okay, this is hard, but you get my point. This is like bringing a multilateral alliance to the negotiating table. It makes you feel a bit less isolated, and you can better protect your non-negotiables. And you may even get the chance to make some demands of society for once. But there's also a different sense in which we changed CMC. We remade it in our own image through the smallest of interactions with other people, because other people take us as role models, often without our knowledge. To see what I mean, think about how you learned the ropes at CMC in your first year here. Who was your fig? Who convinced you to go to your first Athenaeum talk? Who gave you advice on picking classes and navigating the chaos that is our class registration portal? Overall, who at CMC made you who you are today? I'd wager that some of those people were members of the classes of 2016, 17, and 18, and we do the same thing for the classes of 2020 and beyond. Our legacy will make it to the class of, I'll pick a far-off year, 2048. Hopefully by 2048, the computer lab printers will jam less often. If we even have printers anymore, that is. So when we talk about changing the world, a lot of what we're really doing is changing the way the world changes people, and this actually plays into one day, one session of a discussion-based class I had here at CMC. In that class, a full-on fate versus free will debate broke out, and the best part is it wasn't even a philosophy class. The fate side argued that the way we humans are socially conditioned is so all-encompassing that we're just products of our environments, collections of learned social behaviors. Certainly not an argument that would be welcomed at an occasion like this. Regardless of your opinion on fate versus free will, though, there is one nuance here, and it's that we are part of other people's, especially other CMCers, social conditioning. We are the CMC environment that the classes after us are shaped by, and we are going to keep being the environment by which other people are shaped. And our non-negotiables, our moral codes, will ensure that we are a positive environment, one where people can be the best versions of themselves, rather than surrendering their individuality to fit some prescribed identity. So congratulations to everyone, first of all to the class of 2019 for making it through, but to the faculty and families and staff as well for making us who we are. Because over 300 of the fruits of your labor are about to walk across this stage, and I don't think any of them are going to get burned at the negotiating table. And I surrender the stage. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon, CMC. Thank you, Bruno, for sharing your incredible story and inspiring us with your words. It's been a privilege to have you as our classmate, Ath Fellow, and friend. Standing up here, I think I can speak for all of us to say that I'm simply overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, professors, for endowing us with knowledge and the hunger to learn. Thank you to our staff and administration for believing in us and for helping us find our way here. And perhaps most important, thank you to the friends and family who have gone out of their way to join us here today. Gracias a nuestras familias y amigos, los queremos mucho. This achievement is as much yours as it is ours. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Arthur Brooks. We have learned at CMC's extensive opportunities to network that sponsoring and introducing other people works best when it goes both ways. So let me give you all a glimpse of the class of 2019. Since we arrived to CMC, the class of 2019 has been constantly challenged with adversity in many forms. But it was in these challenges that we saw the greatest opportunities. In the years that followed, we held the difficult conversations that others avoid, so we could improve our community in ways others haven't. We took heavy risks, we stuck together through disagreement, we learned from each other, and we grew with each other. Tomorrow, we will awaken with a heavier responsibility to address the pressing global issues, to turn polarization into bridging, to turn the degradation of our environment into the preservation of the earth, and to reverse inequality in its many forms into the equal distribution of opportunity. Now, we have a final opportunity to listen and learn how to face these challenges. We welcome to CMC Dr. Arthur Brooks, who exemplifies the spirit of open-mindedness we so value at CMC. Dr. Brooks has been the president of the American Enterprise Institute for a decade. During his tenure, he expanded the Washington think tank's research to include work on poverty, happiness, and human potential. This fall, he will depart AEI to become a professor at Harvard's Kennedy School and Business School and at Bowdoin College. Dr. Brooks is an influential writer in his own right. He is a contributing writer for the Washington Post and the New York Times. This year, he released his most recent book, Love Your Enemies: How Decent People Can Save America from the Culture of Contempt. It is a great opportunity to hear from Dr. Brooks today. His work is dedicated to achieving progress through collaboration, which exemplifies CMC's culture. This spring, Dr. Brooks and the Dalai Lama co-wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. Their message is one that we, the class of 2019, have lived at CMC. Quote, "The objective is not to vanquish a person I considered my enemy. It is to destroy the illusion that he or she was my enemy in the first place." We have lived this message of CMC. We strive to, in the words of Dr. Brooks, be the leaders who uplift and unite, not denigrate and divide. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Arthur Brooks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edgar. President Chodosh, members of the Board of Trustees, guests, family, friends, and most importantly, members of the graduating class, 2019, Claremont McKenna College. Congratulations on this wonderful day. Thank you for the honor of addressing you and for welcoming me, starting today, into this community. From Edgar just now, you heard a very gracious and sanitized version of my biography. Let me tell you the true part that really matters to me today. There is no chance I could have been standing with you as graduates when I was your age. When I was 19 years old, I dropped out of college. Dropped out, kicked out, splitting hairs. I went on the road as a musician. I played chamber music and jazz for a long time. I wound up in the Barcelona Symphony. And it was 1 month before my 30th birthday that I earned my bachelor's degree by distance learning. It's been a long road and a wonderful road for me to make it to this podium here today. Today I'm the president of a think tank in Washington, D.C., dedicated to public policy. And the truth is that this is familiar territory for me, not because of my educational background, but because Claremont McKenna College has a distinguished reputation for changing public policy. This college has a proud tradition of sending its graduates into public life, into politics, in public administration, and leadership at the highest levels of social enterprise and business. I frankly, as president of the American Enterprise Institute, can't hire enough of you. And even for those of you not going into public policy, there's a public spiritedness around here that says that you believe that in our society, progress is possible if we're willing to lead. So, given what I do for a living, you might expect that I'm going to give you a charge today to call you to arms to go forth and create better public policy. But I'm not going to do that, because I have news for you. Public policy is simply not our biggest crisis in America today, and not the biggest crisis that we have in the world today. The biggest crisis that we have, I believe, is detectable in the words of the wonderful invocation that we heard today from Reverend Wright. We have a crisis of love. Over the past 15 years, our standard of living in this country has risen by 25%, accounting for inflation. It has not been equally distributed, but this country is much richer than it used to be. In the same period, the average happiness in this country has fallen by a fifth. You know as well as I do that there's no public policy that's going to solve that. You know in your hearts that the problem is in our hearts. The solution lies in love. So what am I going to tell you? I'm going to give you 2 assignments today if you choose to accept them. The first assignment I'm going to give you is really scary. But if you do what I ask you, you're going to be a happier person starting today. The second assignment I'm going to give you is really hard. But if you take that assignment, you personally are going to start healing the world. So let's start with the scary part. A couple of years ago, a professor at the University of Chicago, an economics professor named Stephen Levitt, he wrote an important study. You've heard his name, by the way. He's the author of Freakonomics, a big best-selling book, but that's not part of this book, what I'm talking about. It's a newer study that he did about how people make hard decisions in their lives. All of you have been faced with anxiety-provoking, difficult dilemmas where you just don't know what to do. Where saying yes to something is scary, saying no to something is not, but you don't know what's the right answer. You're in agony, you know that feeling. Some of you are struggling with that right now. You're graduating from college. About your next step in education, about your job, about your personal life, about your relationships. If you're not suffering from a big dilemma right now, you probably have relatively recently, or you will soon, and every single person here has suffered in this way. So Stephen Levitt wanted to know, do we tend to say scary yes too much or safe no too much? So here's how we did the study. He asked if people were suffering from a terrible dilemma, and he said, let me make the decision for you with the flip of a coin. And 26,000 people signed up for his experiment. God bless America. It's like, I'm going to let a University of Chicago economist flip a quarter to tell me if I should propose to my girlfriend. It's insane. And yet, that's what he did. And they were all different sorts of dilemmas, health dilemmas, education, career, love, relationships, all different sorts of dilemmas. And he flipped the coin with a computer and he sent back their results. And here's the interesting part. He followed up a year later to see who was happier, the yeses or the nos, where 1 is miserable and 10 is bliss. And he measured before the experiment and a year later, and guess what? The yeses were a whole digit happier than the nos. This was like a drug test. This was random assignment. There's news you can use here, my friends. You need to say yes more. You need to take more risk. Now, why do I bring this up in the context of love? Because coming across my desk recently is an important study by a professor down the road at San Diego State University named Jean Twenge. And what she finds is that young people today, particularly those between 20 and 30, are a third less likely to form romantic relationships than they were when I was that age. Why is it? Well, she thinks it's simple, because romantic love is really scary. It's a huge risk to make yourself vulnerable, and a lot of people are simply choosing not to do it. But when you think about it, it's kind of a question of personal entrepreneurship, isn't it? We talk about entrepreneurship in the context of starting a business. You've talked about that a lot. A lot of you are going to do that. That's great. But that's not the big enterprise. The real enterprise is your life. The question is, are you an entrepreneur with your life or not? I was giving a speech about this. I was speculating on this, about more life entrepreneurship by giving away your heart and taking a big risk. For a big group of people in their 20s, in Washington, D.C., a couple weeks after that speech, I was on an airplane, and a young guy, 28 or 29, came up and he said, "Are you Dr. Brooks?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I heard that speech you gave about entrepreneurship of the heart, about giving your heart away, and I can't get it out of my head." And I said, "Yeah?" He said, "I'm on my way right now to tell a woman that I've been in love with for 2 years that I'm in love, and I want her to be in love too." I said, "She doesn't know this?" He said, I was too afraid to tell her. And I said, "It was only a speech, man." So I didn't hear from him. But I ran into him in Washington, D.C. a couple months later at a party. And I recognized him. His face was imprinted on my brain. I went running up to him and I said, "Remember me?" And he says, "Oh, yeah." I said, "So what happened with that woman?" And he said, "She shot me down." I said, "I'm so sorry." I was very contrite. I felt like I gave him terrible advice. And here's what he said. No. He said, "I've been meaning to send you an email to thank you." "What are you talking about, man?" Are you some sort of masochist? He said, no. He said, I was so afraid, and then I took your advice, and I got rejected. You know what? I didn't die. And now I'm not afraid anymore. Research shows that entrepreneurs on average have 4 failures before they have success in business. That's true in life too. So I told you I was going to give you a scary assignment, and here it is, my friends. For some of you, there's someone who doesn't know about your love, whether it's romantic love or some other type. You've been afraid to express it. It's time to come clean and be a life entrepreneur. I want you to celebrate your graduation by taking a risk with your heart. Now the hard part. That was a scary assignment, I know. Here's a hard assignment. Love your enemies. There's a study that came out in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2014. It had a big impact on me. I read it in February of 2014 by a psychologist at Northwestern University named Adam Waits. With his colleagues, he was writing about something called motive attribution asymmetry. Bunch of fancy words. Look, we got to get tenure some way. Motive attribution asymmetry, what is it? It's a phenomenon in which 2 groups of people that are in conflict mutually believe that they are motivated by love, but the other side is motivated by hatred. Now, you know perfectly that this happens in conflict zones around the world, in the Balkans, or after the Rwandan genocide, or in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You can understand how this happens, and you understand how this makes reconciliation impossible. I'm motivated by love, but you're motivated by hatred. Both sides can't be right, by the way. It's a cognitive error. Both sides can be wrong, but both sides can't be right. Here's the reason that study got my attention. I understand this in war zones. Here's how it got interesting to me. Adam Waits and his colleagues found that for the very first time since we've been keeping records, the level of motive attribution asymmetry between Democrats and Republicans in America is as strong as it is between Palestinians and Israelis. That's a big problem, my friends, if we are going to bring this country together and make progress. You can't do it only with your side. You need to persuade somebody, and you can't when you're saying the other side is evil and deviant and stupid. This explains some interesting statistics. 1 in 6 Americans have stopped talking to a family member or close friend since the 2016 election. We have a level of political polarization that's higher than at any time since the American Civil War. I saw a curious illustration of this in my life right after I read that study, because I do a lot of speeches. This is what I do for a living. As the president of a think tank, there's relatively little thinking in tanks. I mostly raise money and give 175 speeches a year. I mean, my job is like running for Senate and never getting elected. And I was on the road in 2014. I talked to all different kinds of audiences. I don't care what people's politics are. I'll talk to the far left, to the far right, and everybody in between. I love ideas and sharing ideas. And it was actually a conservative activist conference I was addressing after I read that study in New Hampshire. 700 conservative activists, right? Screaming, shouting. I got there early and I looked at the program and I was the only guy not running for president. I thought, this is weird, this is a mistake. The mistake is not somebody thought I was going to be running for president, but the mistake is that I was invited. But there are no mistakes, my friends, only opportunities. I thought to myself, what am I supposed to do? What am I here to do? So I listened a little bit to the politicians. God love them, I don't have to run for anything. But they were doing what politicians always do, get in front of a sympathetic audience and say, you're right and the other side's stupid. That's what they do. I thought to myself, how can I make this better? So in the middle of my speech, I said, my friends, I want you to remember something. Recall, this is 700 conservative activists. I said, I want you to think right now about the people who are not here because they don't feel welcome. And they don't feel welcome because they don't agree with you on policy. Who are they? Progressives. And I want you to remember, they're not stupid and they're not evil. They're simply Americans who disagree with you on public policy. And if you think you're right, here's your job, to persuade them with love. It was not an applause line. But there was an applause line that came right after that because the lady said, I think they're stupid and evil. Now, I didn't take it personally. It was a joke. But that illustrated some kind of important points. My friends, that's motive attribution asymmetry in action. I think they're stupid and evil. Have you ever thought that? Have you ever done that? I have. It's very impractical. Nobody in history has ever been insulted into agreement. It has never happened. If your job is persuasion as opposed to showing your virtue, then you must love. There is no other way. Maybe you've heard the famous words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, if you hate your enemies, you have no way to redeem and transform your enemies. You cannot hate people into being convinced. But it's also not just a practical problem that we have in America today, it's a moral problem. See, when that lady said that, you know what I thought of? I thought of Seattle. Why? Because it's my hometown. Anybody here from Seattle? Fire up. Look, Seattle, as many of you know, is politically, according to the data, the most progressive city in America. My mother was an artist. My father was a college professor. What do you think their politics were? That lady in New Hampshire was making a joke, but she was talking about my mom. And I took it personally. That's the test of our moral worth, that we take things personally and we stand up, not for the people with whom we disagree. The mark of moral courage is to stand up to the people with whom we agree on behalf of those with whom we disagree. Are you up for that challenge? It's pretty hard. I've failed that challenge many times. And that, my friends, is why our country is being ripped apart by hatred, no worse, by contempt, which Schopenhauer said is the conviction of the utter worthlessness of another person. If you pay attention to television or politics or, God forbid, to social media, what do you see today? Recrimination, reproach, insults, sarcasm, leaders at the highest level of our country who bully and berate those with whom they disagree. It's a disgrace. Families are being torn apart over political disagreements. Political foes treat each other with enemies. People end friendships. I hope you haven't. Maybe you have. And now here's the weird part. We're acting with contempt. I do it too, but we hate it. 93% of Americans, they say that we're tired of how divided we've become as a country. Huge majorities say privately they believe in the importance of compromise. They reject absolutism from the extreme wings of both political sides, and they're not motivated by partisan loyalty. My friends, that's you. That's me. And yet, there's an outrage industrial complex in this country, in media and politics, and sometimes even on college campuses. People are dedicated to driving us apart for their own personal gain. We cannot be held in thrall to this complex. We must be leaders and declare our independence. How? How are we going to do it? How are we going to execute on this challenge? Here's an answer. There's an answer from 1957 from a familiar voice on this campus, President George Benson, the first president of Claremont McKenna College. He said that the CMC community has a commitment to a free society. We may go about achieving it in different ways, but we all want it, and we all recognize that it means listening respectfully to each other. Maybe you think that that's President Benson exhorting us to be civil. You'd be wrong. Civility is a garbage standard for the Claremont McKenna College community and for America and for the world. If I told you my wife Esther and I are civil to each other, you'd say we need counseling. To meet President Benson's standard, we need something stronger, something subversive. We need love, which St. Thomas Aquinas defined as to will the good of the other. And it's not just your friends and the people who agree with you, it's your foes, it's your enemies, it's the people that don't share your views at all. Now, sometimes people will say, I can't do that because some people are actually evil. They deserve my contempt. I've thought that. I have thought that. I am guilty. But it's wrong, and it's radical. See, here's the deal. What's my goal? It's not to exile somebody or kick them out of the country or put them in jail or hurt them because they disagree with me. My goal is to change how people think. How's my hate working out for that? Not so great. Only love will persuade. So can you do it? Can you realistically be some small part of this great project? The answer is yes, and some of you in this tent already are. There are two graduating seniors here today. You heard from one of them before, the great Bruno Youn, inspirational. And his partner in a project here, his partner Hamza Shrikant, they run the Athenaeum Fellows. The Athenaeum Fellows program is something that all of you students and most of you parents and families know about. Maybe a couple of you don't. It's a signature program from this college that brings scholars from across the ideological spectrum, people who don't agree, to discuss and debate the most important topics of the time. I have spoken at the Athenaeum myself. It's unique and it's great and it's yours. Let me tell you how Hamza describes the Athenaeum. Okay, I've got a quote from one of you. She says, it brings together diverse, contrarian, and well-substantiated opinions, and they're always welcome. My friends, that's a leadership lesson. That's a love lesson for leaders. What is it? Never fear disagreement. Never fear the competition of ideas. Be strong. And by the way, this is not just about Claremont McKenna students in the fight to bring people together without fear. It's faculty, too. Some of you have heard about this infamous thing that I just admire so much. It's called the University Blacklist. It's actually a team-taught course by Professor John Shields, sitting over here, and his colleague at Pitzer, Phil Zuckerman. And it's about books that are just too hot to handle, that people can't cope with. They can't read. They're too dangerous. You're reading them here. Many of you have been involved in the University Blacklist. These things are simply too controversial for less courageous people and less courageous schools. Here's why I admire this. It's not because either professor endorses insane ideas. It's because they're saying that at Claremont McKenna College, you're not afraid to talk about hard things. You're willing, you're able, you're trying to discuss in a spirit of solidarity and mutual support and even love things that other people are afraid of. In today's world, that's weird. In today's world, that's rare. We need leaders like you that have been trained to do this. And then we need you to go out into the world to teach others to do this. It's our only hope of helping other people love their enemies. So let me close, and we get back to you, because this is your day. Graduates of great Claremont McKenna College, leaders for our nation and world. I've given you two assignments, and they have nothing to do with what you should do for a living. They have nothing to do with what you should think politically, and they have nothing to do with the policies that you should promote. You can figure that out. I don't have to tell you. It doesn't matter what I think. My assignment is for you to confess your love for somebody else today. That's scary, but you're going to be happier. My second assignment is for you to love your enemies, or at least the people that you used to think that were your enemies. That's what you deserve, and that's what our world actually needs from you the most. So class of 2019, which, by the way, I hope will become known as the class of love. First time somebody said that since Berkeley in '68. Go out and serve the world. Show what's written on your heart. Congratulations, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks, for those inspiring remarks. It is now my pleasure to confer an honorary degree pursuant to the resolution adopted by the Board of the Trustees and approved by the faculty. I would like to invite Dr. Brooks, Professor of Economics Heather Antico, and CMC Trustee Tina Daniels to join me here. So, Dr. Brooks, In recognition of your many contributions and achievements as a leader in public policy and scholarship, Claremont McKenna hereby confers upon you the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws, with all the rights and privileges appertaining thereto, in token of which we cause you to be vested with the hood of the college appropriate to your degree, and present you with a citation and accompanying diploma.
Good afternoon. It is my great honor today to introduce you to the recipient of Claremont McKenna College's Distinguished Public Service Award, Timothy Wright of the class of 1977. As a survivor of the increasing gang violence in Compton in the mid-1970s, and the first of 7 children to go to college in his family, Tim arrived at CMC on a mission. Inspired by the heartbreaking experiences of watching friends die and the inspirational community leadership of his parents, Tim had developed a strong commitment to working for justice and a belief in the power of organized community action. He intended to pursue that commitment through college, and to our great fortune, accepted a college scholarship to play football here and came to CMC. Like many of his Claremont Men's College peers, Tim had been a student government leader and a standout athlete in high school. Rising above the social and academic challenges placed in his path, Tim leaned forward into the opportunity offered by CMC, playing fullback and defensive end for the Stags, and developing close friendships with fellow students and members of the faculty. But Tim's commitment to justice was to be repeatedly tested during his time here. As just one example, as chairman of the 5-college Black Student Union, Tim was suspended during a dispute over a teaching contract for philosopher-activist Angela Davis. Tim and his fellow students held very firm in their support for Davis over the strong objections of powerful constituencies. But fortunately, the close relationship that Tim had developed with President Jack Stark and others helped bring about a resolution, with Davis coming to Claremont to teach and Tim being reinstated. But given the trouble and all of that difficulty, why did Tim persist in his effort to bring such a controversial voice to campus? Quote, "I was trying to get people on campus to understand a different perspective through reasoned arguments," Tim explained. Though it was more than 40 years ago, that same spirit of seeking understanding through different perspectives remains a pillar of our CMC community. Our disputes may get heated, and we may still agree to disagree, especially when it comes to specifics, but we strive always to be guided by our mission to pursue knowledge in order to serve civilization. And boy, has Tim served civilization. Following his graduation from CMC with a dual degree in economics and political science, Tim was a star at UCLA Law School, chosen as the first Black Chief Justice of the Moot Court Honors Program and the student speaker for Commencement. As a public interest lawyer, Tim worked on environmental as well as civil rights and social justice issues, both in the United States and around the world. He was a close advisor to Chicago Mayor Harold Washington, participated in the South Africa reform discussions that led to the release of Nelson Mandela, and helped negotiate South Africa's new constitution. As Dr. Brooks so powerfully modeled this morning, America's finest civil servants are not constrained by partisan politics. Tim, to his credit, has worked for 4 United States presidents, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. He worked as a domestic policy advisor for President Bill Clinton, held appointed advisory roles during the administrations of President George H.W. Bush, as well as George W. Bush, and counseled a young Barack Obama during pivotal moments on his way to the White House, including successfully brokering the peace with primary rival Hillary Clinton. As Tim recently explained to CMC student leaders Zach and Melissa during their amazing free Food for Thought podcast, Tim defines success as making a difference to the furtherance of people, not just in this country, but around the world. He explained that his measure of success is, quote, how we treat each other, how we treat one another, how it is that we express love for one another. That has an impact on how we relate to each other and how all of us are able to move forward. Because I don't think we can leave anyone behind. Since his work in the justice and political communities, Tim has taken on a new important journey and will very soon, in July or August, be ordained as a minister to continue working on the issues of justice and reconciliation and economic empowerment through the church communities across the country. Timothy W. Wright III, we are so proud of your remarkable accomplishments and your dedication to human advancement. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of Claremont McKenna College, and in recognition of your service to our nation and to humanity, I am deeply honored to present you with the Distinguished Service Public Service Award.
We have now reached the part of the program you've all been waiting for, the conferring of degrees. I would like to invite President Chodosh and the Chair of the Board, David McGrublian, to come forward for the conferring of degrees. I ask all candidates for the master's degree and the bachelor's degree to please rise. That's you. Mr. President, I now have the honor to present to the candidates here today, together with others, the degree of Masters of Arts in Finance and the degree of Bachelor of Arts as appropriate, as recommended by the faculty and as approved by the Board of Trustees.
By the authority vested in me as President of Claremont McKenna College, I now confer upon you the degree of Master of Arts in Finance and the degree of Bachelor of Arts as appropriate, as recommended by the faculty and approved by the Board of Trustees. Graduates, please move your tassels from left to right with your right hand and be seated.
It is my honor to recognize the graduates receiving a degree of Masters of Arts in Finance and the graduates receiving a degree of Bachelors of Arts and Masters of Arts, the BA-MA degree. Ladies and gentlemen, come forward through the most circuitous route. Yes, you got that right. As your names are read, and to receive your diplomas and your hoods. Come up here. John Hamilton O'Malley. Jared Scott Barclay. Mackenzie Moran Bradford. Chloe Cho. Nicholas Glenn Renaud de Gallier. Roma Eliana Forrest. Utah Jang. Charles Jackson Novogradic. Mark Sway. Shujie Xia. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome your applause for the MA and BA MA class of 2019. It is now my honor to recognize the graduates receiving degrees of Bachelors of Arts. We'll go much faster from now on. So, Spencer Robert Abraham. Matthew Abrahamson. Lyra Agwal. Patricio Aguilar. Catherine Amundsen. Ashley On. Jessica Ann Ainsley. Ellie Aldous. Mitchell Joseph Allen. William Joseph Altimus Cullen. Chloe Angel Maria. Anugraha Anand. Bhavika Anunpara. Jeremy Gregorio Anderson. Camila Arias. Laya Aronoff. Mo Miat Ong. Jason Samuel Barbaros. Cameron Elaine Barney. Eilina Basic. Samuel Hoffman Becker. Hannah Berg. Lucy Rose Berman. Corbin Bethurum. Ahmed Bilal. Simon Björkholt. Megan Grace Blomberg. Connor Randall Bloom. Connor Bowen. Evan Maidrian Boyer. Peter Jacob Brody Moore. Lauren Brody. David Brown. Alexander Salyard Brussel. Yeva Burke. Anthony Burry. Lindsay Brooke Burton. Lauren Kikue Calogero. Michelle Cao. Daniel James Carr. Catherine Rose Carrillo. Alexandra Carter. Julian Edward Castaneda. Ryan Michael Shakmak. Danielle Chemy. Tony Chow. Isabel Nadel Chavez. Lauren Taylor Chavez. Samarth Chavla. Alice Chen. Michael Yuquan Chen. Warren Shanfong Chen. Seo-Yoon Choi. Harrison Pinkett Schutson. Caroline Shaw. Emma Choi. Jae Wook Chung. Natalie Alexandra Coffin. Mackenzie Christopher Cooney. Tiana Fuster Kotenko. Kevin Javier Ramon Covarrubias Mercado. Alison Spencer Crum. Jessica Clarita Cruz. Amanda Eve Daly. Matthew Joseph DeRudy. Evan Parker Davis. Jasmine Del Rio. Pallavi Deshpande. Namruta Dave. Varun Roshan Dhananjaya. Saloni Deer. Robert Brewster Doby. Daniel Taylor Dominguez. Michaela Jichung Dong. Renata Roma Drucker. Owen Charles Dubeck. Remy Alexis Edwards. William Thompson Edwards Jr. Patrick Jamal Elliott. Adele Archer English. Joseph Esbenshade. John Morgan Everett. Jacob Alexander Einen. Nicholas Robert Fedorochko. Emmanuel Feliki. Chi Feng. Rory Fontenot. Sam Fraser. Sarah Elizabeth Frymouth. Andrew Jonathan Friedlander. Henry Joseph Fromm. Candice Fung. Haruna Bashir Gadio. Eamon Gallagher. Timothy James Gallagher. Marisa Lynn Galvez. Khadija Ganiji. Marie-Christine Julieta Garcia. Paranita Garg. Madison Geary. Jack Ryan Gleiberman. Marion Haley Kulukundis Goldberg. Trey Gonzalez. No, Frank James Gonzalez. Sorry about that. Frank J. Gonzalez, the third. Julian Gordy. Brittany Ali Griffin. Sabrine Gary Abdulrahim Griffith. Ree O'Dowd Grobecker. Hannah Rebecca Grobison. Jenna Virginia Maud Grunwald. Joshua Gabriel Guggenheim. Elaine Guo. Maya Abigail Gutierrez. Corey J. Hack. Charles Benjamin Harris. Tori Hart. Ryan Andrew Houghton. Shad Joseph Halou. Patrick Ryan Hennessy. Emma Embry Henson. Julian Hernandez Jr. Prashant Hinduja. Bak Van Hoang. Riley Ruth Hoffman. Connor Forrest Hogan. Allison Hung. Emma Gail Houston. Sasha Hoy. Kevin Shu. Shi Hu. Austin Patrick Hung. Jawi Jack Wong. Mung Ting Huang. Jake Hudson Humphrey. Victoria Wynn. Ari Lawrence Ifshin. Elijah Jackson. Rogo Jin. Adrian Yunhee Jo. Aiden Williams Johnson. Shivali Mehul Joshi. Daniel Mary Kagan. Theodore George Khan. Malka Yasmin Kauser. Caroline Elizabeth Keeney. James Francis Keneally. Jake Ryan Kessler. Gayatri Kitavarapu. Tegan Grace Knight. Janvi Kutcha. Ellery Rose Kelker-Wolf. Ria Kumar. Nick Alexander Laberge. Sissia Lai. Blake Alexander Lepen. Justin Law. Hunter Leplat. Sylvia Simone LeBlanc. Madeline Lee. Catherine Healy Leon. Alexander Lee. Shenyu Lee. Jia Jian Lee. Natalie Bridget Lemon de Brada. Franny Lynn. Elaine Lynn. Andrew Jordan Lindqvist. Philip Whitmore Lippencott. Megan Lowe. Alec Michael Lopata. Joshua Jonathan Lopez. Jack George Laurie. Adonis Lou. Jennifer Tucker Mace. Sami Mullis. Alexander Malmlund. Sarah Eleanor Malott. Nikaya Renee Manley. Melia Camille Martin. William McKenna Masters. Mei Masuyama. Mei Chu McDonald. Jacob Eric McGowan. Megan Mendez. Isabel Rose Milano. Bryn Catherine Miller. Logan Alex Miller. Henry Meriwether Claes Minervini. Becky Monroy. Lachlan David Montgomery. Charlotte Elizabeth Morrissey. Ryan James Motter. Lily Helen Musco. Eric Coyote Davis Myers. Patrick Joseph Myers. Amia Neroli. John William Nicolau. Mary Brian Owen. Paloma Elizabeth Palmer. Dylan Robert Paoli. Nicolas Papageorgiou. Annie Jung-ha Park. Michelle Pashby. Devang Patel. Evan Michael Poltich. Betzaira Perez. Jainia Petrova. Lan Nok Von Fang. Paloma Pineda. Raghav Prasad. Matthew Saltakis. Nova Kasim Kauser. Luke Calogero Radis. Christopher John Ragus. Nolan Daniel Rajakumar. Kelly Frances Ransom. Nina Rafi. Ross Charles Reggio. Charlotte Reynolds. Bing Ian Run. Natasha May Reyes. William Henry Richardson. François Ries. Patricia Elizabeth Rivera. Justin Julio Rodriguez. Omar Ricardo Rodriguez. Aaron Rogers. Vanessa Alejandra Romo. Isaac Roth. Payson Alexis Rule. Ravi Sadhu. Dean Sagafi. Seth Segal. Russell Jason Apostol Salazar. Paola Alicia Salomon. Alejandro Sendel Gandra. Harrison Sutley. John Stephen Savard. Arnav Soni. Dhruv Soni. Roxanne Sazagar. Joshua Hornstein Skal. Kara Schachter. Joseph Leonard Scheuer. Megan Caroline Schneider. Cece Schwab. Nicholas Segura. Dobzhansky. Elena Katharina Seifert. Jack Sievertson. Jack Sievertson. Rebecca Ilana Shane. James Jordan Shelley. Yue Shen. Patrick Eamon Shore. Jacqueline Irene Siegler. André Simoneau. Sean August Smook. Hamza Shrikant. Savannah Tate Stern. Louis Charles Stervenu. Sarah Renee Stevens. Tiana Esteban Stevenson Pugh. Marion Danielle Stewart. Michael Malcolm Stolarski. Brandon Joseph Suh. Caitlin Suh. Crystal Diane Sun. Tristan Scott Svensson. Sydney May Talmy. Jackson Paul Tate. Christian Lawrence Tremichian. Celeste Ann Turney. Meredith Ann Teamy. Patrick Cecil Thomas. Ethan Nicholas Tom. Andy Troutman. Alicia Lichin Sai. Rin Lenlei Tun. Kimberly Michelle Tuttle. Tess Charlotte Van Hulsen. Rafael Tungul Velasco. Avinash Vemuri. Kei Otto Fukami Vogel. Brian Thomas Wall. Elizabeth Eleanor Reinstein. Daniel Glenn Walker. Emily Yuan Wang. Grayan Wang. Edgar Gerardo Warnholz Perez. Tyler Lee Wealthy. Catherine Mia Rittman. Peter Cortland Williams. Grace Zippy Wilson. Richard Conover Wilshire Gordon. Jessica Patricia Lee Rinsinger. Melia Wong. Zachary Ryan Wong. Alexander Thomas Wren. Gina Nan Wu. Yu Cheng Wu. Yusing Ching. Kristen Marie Yang. Yujia Yao. Ho Chung Yi. Bruno George Youn. Jung Se Zhang. Aaron Zheng. Xiangxi Christy Zhu. Xiaoxue Zhu. Ladies and gentlemen, one final applause for the class of 2019.
Let's all give a hand to Dean Youn for that wonderful example of his pronunciations were nearly perfect. His Chinese pronunciation particularly good today. It's wonderful to be with you. It's a sad, sweet moment. And before we raise a glass in final celebration, I want to thank and congratulate all of our families and friends, our faculty and staff, our alumni and trustees for their individual role in supporting the accomplishments of our outstanding graduates and the strong community and leaders that they've become. To our graduates, well, let me first take one of Dr. Brooks' homework assignments. I love you. Love you. There's some graduates at some other colleges I love too. Maybe that's the second one. I'm deeply proud of you, and I will miss you more than you know. And in your charge today, I want to explain why. I want you to see what indeed, what we all have learned from you. And I want you to take that powerful lesson with you. Now, you already know that CMC is more than a beautiful campus, more than the liberal arts curriculum that you've mastered, more than the warm community you've created, more than the fun experiences you've had. CMC is, we all are, the deeper lessons we've learned from one another and those that you will draw on over your lifetime. You may not yet know that when you leave here today, you will seek to recreate what you love in this place wherever you go. Your local park will become your green beach, albeit with different rules. Your apartment building will become your new quad. Your gym, a lesser version of Robert's Pavilion, to be sure. The people you work for, your new inferior faculty, and your new friends will become some lighter version of your figlets. Your local museums and public lectures will substitute as your Athenaeum, only without the Rice Krispie treats. And the most challenging corners of the world will become your new classrooms. And through all of these adventures, you will relearn and teach others the most important lessons that we've learned together here with you. In the liberal arts, we all learn to appreciate the vexing, magical nature of paradox. And you might recall before Thanksgiving, I wrote to you about the difference between pessimism and optimism. Pessimists, it's been said, see difficulty in every opportunity, and optimists see opportunity in every difficulty. And yet, if you can't see the difficulty, we never do find the opportunity. And today, I'm here to call on a parallel, even more powerful paradox. And that is this. Our greatest strengths can create our most devastating risk. And our deepest deficits are the source of our superpowers. Now, you know these lessons from your studies and your experiences. We all know assets produce liabilities. Responsibility brings personal risk, and sometimes our most remarkable talents and personal strengths create our biggest blind spots. Overconfidence can easily slide into complacency, carelessness, arrogance. Just when you think things are going incredibly well in life may be when you need to exercise the greatest care. And yet, what we realize less frequently is that our greatest weaknesses can become our most invaluable strengths. Our liabilities can become our assets. Our superpowers come from our ability to overcome our biggest deficits. Just think about it for a moment. Every superhero in our comic books has overcome a personal tragedy or disability as a child. Batman witnessed the murder of his parents. Spider-Man was obsessed as a youth with rejection, inadequacy, and loneliness. Captain America was a poor, Lower East Side immigrant and orphan. And their superpowers come from their deepest tragedies and losses, their most debilitating circumstances. Now, we love these stories and others like them because we each experience this internal struggle. How do we face our weaknesses, our tragedies, our vulnerabilities? We love stories of others, turning these to strength because we aspire to do this ourselves. We learn from the recognition of our own ignorance. We grow confidence from our insecurities. We develop judgment from confusion. We even feel joy from our pain. Seeing opportunity in difficulty is a choice integral to the improvement of our own lives and the human condition around us. Just think about our distinguished awardee, Tim Wright, and his journey from Compton through CMC to serve 4 US presidents. Think about Arthur Brooks, whose college experience was a correspondence course, and who will be teaching at Harvard's Kennedy and business schools, as well as at Bowdoin next year. And think about Bruno, and how he came to CMC to become more socially challenged, and how today he served as your senior class speaker. And each of you, each one of you, has your own story of the special challenges that you overcame. And together today, you inspire thousands here and around the world. The power behind what we achieve in life is not just derived from our talents. Yes, some of us run faster, calculate and read more quickly, are more intuitive than others. But what drives leadership is the confidence that we can overcome our inabilities, face our limitations, supersede our insecurities, and especially when most tired, do the hard work it takes to make a difference. You know this. You teach it through your example and in reflecting on your class and all of your many accomplishments. The national and world championships, the outstanding scholarship in your thesis projects, the prestigious postgraduate fellowships and job opportunities, the successful programs, and the strong community you helped build through some of our greatest challenges. This is your powerful legacy. Just when everything may have seemed okay on the surface and then suddenly didn't, you have demonstrated the resilience to work through our most difficult moments and to do it together. Think about it. The ways you've grown and contributed to the resilience of this college. From the fall of 2015, when you were freshmen, to this past spring of 2019, when we lost our 2 CMC sons, our 2 brothers, within 8 days. Yes, in a world of division, you helped to build the Care Center, Mi Gente, BSA, the FIG program, and many others. You built more unum out of our pluribus. You grew love out of fear. You did exactly what Arthur Brooks is prescribing for our country. In a world of shrinking intellectual humility and conclusions in search of evidence, you inform the Athenaeum with your open and incisive questions. In a world of academic pressure, each year you developed 100 new community events through the CPB. And through it all, you have learned and taught by example a powerful lesson, one you must take into your future to face both good times and bad. Many successes, achievements, honors, and rewards await you. That is to be certain. But sadly, none of the challenges you faced the past 4 years will be your last. At times, you will struggle at work. You will lose loved ones. You will face enemies who haven't yet read Arthur Brooks' book. And yet, you will persevere because of what you learned here. your vulnerabilities can become your greatest strengths. So I want you to promise me, when one of your friends, one of your classmates forgets this charge, you will remember it and remind them of the tough rapids they have navigated, the deep holes they've climbed out of, the steep mountains they've scaled, the challenges you all turned into your strength, your superpowers. You have turned fear into courage, conflict into understanding, and vexing problems into creative solutions. So now I'd like all of our class of 2019 to stand to receive your charge, and I'd like you to extend an arm to one another, huddle up a bit. For I want to deliver your charge in a way that reinforces what you already know and know to do well. So here it is. Fill the cold with your warmth. Counter ignorance with your learning. Include others when they exclude you. Transform conflict into resolution. Steal from fear your deeper courage. Turn regret into aspiration. Inspire the defeated with your perseverance. And see in every mistake a future solution. That is your charge. That is our CMC. That is our class of 2019. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to you all.
Thank you.